What's up guys, my name is ZUZO, and today I'm going to be showing you how I made my most recent track, Here's to Life. Let's get right into it. Alright, so this is the project file that I made for Here's to Life. There's a lot of cool things going on in this track. So where I started with this track, I started with the keys. I was using these, a Contact library, and it's probably my favorite piano sound, and it's free, so I use the hybrid keys, the basic preset that they have, the atmospheric. Up here, there's a bunch that you can use. I just like the one that it starts you off with, and it sounds a little something like this. And that was like how I started this entire track. I just started with that, copied and pasted it a bunch of times, and basically just ran with that for the entire song. That became like the bass. The next thing I added was this little pluck, kind of cool little plucky, chimey sounding thing. I use Serum. It's just my favorite synthesizer that you could use. I bought it a couple years ago, and I've been just using it ever since, and that one sounds like this. Ooh. There it is. Ugh. Okay, to be fair, I don't know how to play the piano at all, so So once I had like this sort of thing going on, this is basically the start of the song. That's how I started this song. Just added that little rising progression. It feels like it's building up to something. You got that slow, subtle clap going on. And then right at the beginning, right after this intro section, I added this little synth that I made, a little patch. Called it the Future Whip patch. It's a really simple future bass chord stack kind of thing. And I think it's really cool. I think it's just basic, but it sounds good, so I mean, why not use it, right? This was I basically followed the same chord progression as the keys and made my life easy. I'm lazy, so I don't really like making things complicated, and I was just like, okay, this is perfect. So what I did was I just had this little thing on top. Yeah, I definitely don't know how to play the key, but yeah. Added it right at the beginning and added this extra little rhythm to it that kind of just slowly builds up into the actual drop. I was adding that re-space that you hear right here. That you get the idea. That's another Serum patch that I have, just called the re-space. Super simple re-space. I think I found this preset. I think that's pretty much how it was, and I just sort of tuned it until it sounded good in the fitting of the song and everything like that. And then obviously you got your drum break in here as well. Nothing too complicated. A little bit of side chaining from the kick drums. For this kick drum, I use Fruity Balance for my side chaining, so I can automate and draw in all of my side chaining. So I have everything routed from these mixer channels into the side chain. A lot of the things go into here, and the things that I want side chain, I put on Fruity Balance, and then I just simply right click on the volume and then create this automation clip, and that's where you see this whole thing sort of making this ducking under thing. So you can hear the drum break. Cool. And so from there, as you can tell, I have a lot of colors going on all over this project file. It's mostly just because like I like to be able to know what instruments are what when it comes onto the playlist. Using FL Studio, like it's super easy to get lost in the mess of automations and all of your MIDI clips and your audio files. It's super easy to get lost in it all. So I just color code everything so that my brain is like, all right, cool, this section is hi-hats. Like if I need to figure out what, you know, instrument's not sitting right with me, it's like, all right, my reds are my synths, my yellows are hi-hats. Obviously you could do this with any DAW, and you could choose any color you want. This is just me, and I've been doing it for last few years, and it really does help my workflow because then I can actually find everything that I'm looking for. Going on to the next thing, and then it's just the build, the classic EDM build. Kick drum fast, it gets faster, the claps get faster, and then that, you know, sub drop and all that stuff that just sort of rises with as well as a sub oscillator going off and going up, as well as like a white noise, and it just sounds like this. So yeah, that's super simple, but there's a cool couple of things that I did in here, especially on this pre-drop, this little space before the actual drop. I used this, kept a little bit of the melody from the plucks in there, but then there's this sub drop, and the other part was the reverse of that same sub drop. Sort of what I wanted to do was make it feel like everything swooshes down. It's like, oh shit, something's about to happen, and then sucks you right back in. And suck you right back in for that drop. The other thing that I did was with these hi-hat rolls, pretty interesting. My headphone users, you'll hear that like the snare sort of travels from your right ear to your left ear. And I did that on purpose because I like the idea of like ear candy and like cool like effects that you really can only hear if you're listening on headphones or if you're listening to it live. If you're listening to it on your phone or something like that, you really won't get the same effect. But it is there, and I'll show you guys how I did that. So it's obviously just a very simple hi-hat roll, just doubled up into the thing, and it's sort of descending. And as it's descending, I use this little control panel here in your piano roll. So FL Studio users, you got this. I don't really know how to use any other DAW. I know Ableton has stuff like this. This was just easier because you can control each individual note. So as you can see right here, these two notes are panned to the right. Kept the next two notes in the middle, and then the other two final notes on the left side, so it feels like it just sort of it feels like it sort of swings, and it swings in and it swings you into the beat, and then you got that drop. So yeah, and now to the part that everybody loves, you got that drop. So on the drop, got a couple of cool things going on there. I'll show you guys the drums first. So on the drums, it's pretty simple, but there's a little complexity to certain rhythms that I found that were really swung this whole thing and just sort of gave it a good feel to it. So this is the drums. So there's some cool things. So it's a classic drum break of sort of like in this 90 BPM sort of hip hop feel. I stacked only a few snares. I love bamboo snares. I don't know what it is. Something about the way that hits is just like way cooler than like just a normal like regular snare. But this one's cool. So altogether it sounds like that. The thing that I really focused on with this part of the drums was these hi-hats, because the hi-hats themselves, they have this rhythm all on its own. It's sort of swung. It's not on beat. Nothing on here is really perfect. If you look on the way this fits on the grid lines, there's a few notes that are just slightly off, and it creates this like little groove. Kind of reminds me of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I don't know why. That just popped in my head. In West Philadelphia, born. Okay, I'm gonna not do that ever again. And then the EDM style that's in here is these synths, and these are like my favorite synths that I've made. that's cool. So let me show you guys this. So I have this rise synth. I called it a rise synth because it literally feels like it's rising. And it's really simple. It's just a few, like a saw waves detuned a little bit, opening up with a filter. You can see all the effects that I have is super dry. Like I didn't really want to put too much on it. I don't think there was a need for it, so I didn't use too much. Just kind of brought out this warm feeling, and I was like, that sounds great. I love it. So past that, what's surprising is this next synth, the Future Whip synth, and that's the same one that was in the very beginning in the intro section of this song. I actually made the rise synth with the whip synth. It's actually the same exact patch, and then all I really did was change sort of the attack, the ADSR just a little bit. I think I changed sort of the way it opens up with the filter. So yeah, technically, they're exactly the same. And I actually did the same thing with another one of the patches that you hear later on. And I think that's like cool. I think it's a really good idea to just sort of push as much as you can out of the same sounds that you make, especially if you make in sound design and do all that type of stuff. By all means, I'm not like great at it. I'm getting better every day. I think it's the point. But if you create a patch and you like the sound, you might as well try to figure out more ways you can utilize that sound rather than like, oh, create a whole brand new sound and try to mix them together, and it creates a whole lot of mess. So I do that a lot, where I just create something and I'll put it back in and I'll find a new way to use it. So that's exactly what I did for most of the sounds you hear in this, except for maybe a few elements. And then there's just these tom drums. I like these toms. They sound cool. I think those tom drums are cool. My favorite tom of all time, because it's the tom of all toms. Shout out to Tom. Alright. So then there's this little switch up. I had this idea, funny story about this switch up right here. When I was making this song and this idea came into my head, I was sitting at a Starbucks and I was working on this song, and it was probably like, 3 or 4 in the afternoon, just sitting at a Starbucks at a coffee shop, just having like a caramel macchiato, like a basic Starbucks goer. I don't want to offend anybody. Was making this song, and I found this little rhythm inside of itself, and then I'm just sitting in the Starbucks and I'm just like jamming out to myself and headphones on and everything, and nobody can hear what I'm listening to, and I probably look like a maniac, but I was so into like the song that I was making, I was like, I don't really care, it sounds great. And the switch up came, it's probably one of the first things that I made in this song. It sounds like this. So these are the chords that I used for this, and they're very simple. It's just a switch up in the rhythm. That the chords don't change too often. It's really just the rhythm that I wanted to change and sort of create this 4 to the floor at 90 BPM sort of dance track. But there is another thing that I added, and that's this reverse whip. And again, this was just another patch that was created out of the other patches. And it sounds like this. I thought it was cool. I thought it was just another way to utilize the same exact patch, and the only difference in this, it's the rise synth. So instead of opening up super slow, it's a very fast open, and then it closes once again using the modulators in Serum, and I think that's like great. I think it sounded really cool. It's fun to mess around with these patches. You can do a lot of different things. So after this whole part sort of switches up, I switched up this bass line. And actually, let me go into this bass line. I don't know why I called it the Big Pluck, but it is a bass line that I created while recreating another track. I was recreating a track by Girolo called Sunburn, and while creating and doing sound design, trying to figure out how they created the track, I made this patch. Gotta resolve. Shout out to my music theory people. I made that patch just because I was trying to recreate another song, and I learned how to make this, and I was like, you know what, that sounds really good. Let me put it into another track. So if you guys want to learn something, a nice little trick, try recreating your favorite artist. I think it's a really good place to start in terms of like how to create music, because then you learn a lot. You learn a lot about how they go about their process, and if you're trying to figure out how they did their mixes, or if you're figuring out how they did their sound design, whatever it may be. You can learn a lot just by doing that. So after all of that, I switched up that bass line and I went to an 808, because 808s are always one of my favorite go-tos. 808s are always hard. Like no matter what, like I feel like an 808 can fit in just about every track as long as you play it right. So that's the 808. And then there's these things that change it up just a little bit, more ear candy kind of stuff. This little arp. That's just another serum patch. I use serum for just about everything. I feel like that's like key to a lot of my production. But it does take up a lot of CPU, so I have to like bounce out some audio a lot of times just to make sure that my computer doesn't just explode while creating music. But that's a cool little one. And then there's this other lead that you hear. It's that. I think that one's cool. I called it the second voice because it is the voice that sort of sits on top of the future bass chords, and it looks like this. And funny enough, I actually did this by mistake. I was like looking for this specific lead. I was looking for a lead for this song, and I created this bass patch a long time ago, which was meant for like house music, and it just ended up being, I pitched up a couple octaves. But originally I wanted it to be, it's a very like bass house music sound, but it didn't end up, I just used this patch and I was like, oh, it sounds really good if I just pitch it up. Sometimes the best things happen on accident. So that's this. Alright, so once I came to the end of this first drop, what I wanted to do was sort of make it feel like time was sort of slowing down or sort of just passing. So I added this like clicking, talking, click tock, click tick, a tick tock on the clock. And I thought it was really cool. When I went into the effects though, what I really did, it was using this Pancake 2 plugin by the Cable Guys, and it basically what it does is it just sort of auto pans. It's an auto panner. That's all it really does. It just makes things sort of move back and forth. I wanted it to be a little bit these ticking, talking clock noises to sort of travel between your ears, just to make it feel like your head's kind of bobbing back and forth, just without even thinking about it. It just feels that way, and so like that's what this Pancaker did. But it was a very subtle thing, and I think less is more in that case. Into the breakdown, and then you got your impacts and your risers and switches transitioning into the next sections. And then melody changes, not too many things, except for maybe going into this next section, going back into the rest of the song. Oh, that's right. So, I'm a big fan of like cool rhythms and like very strange noises, so I use this coin rattle that's just like a stock sound that comes with FL Studio. And I don't even know what it doesn't even really sound like a coin rattle, but it's a coin rattle. As if like someone's like, I don't know, throwing a coin in a rattle. But I thought it was cool. It had its own like rhythm. When you hear it with the clock, it sort of sounds kind of cool. It's at that. When it comes to these sound choices, everything sort of has its own purpose. Like, I love music that has its own bounce. I get a lot of my inspiration from like hip-hop music, and EDM especially is influenced, in my opinion, by the hip-hop scene in ways that don't necessarily correlate to like hard bars and lyrical, miracle whip type of things. It's like, no, it's all about the beat making and the producing and the production value that goes behind it. You can watch a lot of videos on hip hop and trap producers. A lot of their techniques like come from these strange noises that create this rhythm, or at least create this atmosphere when you're listening to music. And I thought about the same thing when it comes to electronic. It's all sound selection and sound design, and it's important. I think it's super important. And then it goes into the same build, same drop. I'm not too complicated when it comes to like my music. I just think if it sounds good, it sounds good. The only difference in this section compared to the other section is that it drops with an 808 instead of dropping with the re-space or that sub bass that I created. And it's the same thing, and it just plays out. And that's the song. That is from start to finish how I did most of my stuff. I will say that like I kept a lot of things very simple, and there was a point to that. I didn't want to create this complication, especially when it came down to like the mixing phase of my track. I think that like adding a bunch of effects and adding a bunch of things that I don't really know too much about. I know a decent amount of compressing. I know a decent amount about like how reverb works and delay times and how routing works and mixing and all this stuff. And the more you add, the more complicated it gets in the mix. And I don't like having to deal with so many different aspects to be aware of. I'm just like, all right, if it sounds good, don't try to change that aspect of it. Like the only thing, even on these like synths, the only thing I really did was maybe a bit of stereo enhancing, saturated just a little bit. You can see here, that's like what this is doing for some of these synths. Maybe just a little bit of reverb. And in fact, this reverb plugin, which is the tall reverb, I didn't turn down the wet knob of this so that it's relatively like subtle. It's not too crazy. It's just there, but it's not enough to like overcomplicate and overbear the rest of the song. I think that's like the beauty of it. Like I might have like compressed my snares because I had snare stacking, but it's not like all of these are crazy. I may have EQ'd it just a little bit to get the right fill and the right sounds out of it, but it wasn't like, yo, like compress the hell out of it, add a bunch of reverb, and then you gotta EQ it and multi-band compress it, and words that are just coming out of my mouth as I'm saying it. There's no point in doing that. If it sounds good, it sounds good. I trust my ears more than I trust like a process of like how you process sounds. That's just how it works. For me, at least. But anyways, I hope you guys learned a thing or two in this production tutorial on how I made my track Here's to Life. If you guys enjoyed the video, please leave a like down in the comments. I don't know how YouTube works, man. Like, you can like the thing, you can dislike it, you can leave a comment how you hated it or loved it. You can subscribe. You can hit that bell notification. If you guys want to listen to this song is already out on all the streaming platforms, Apple Music, Spotify, SoundCloud. Whatever you listen to music, most likely this is going to be on there. If you guys like this content, give me a follow on my social media at ZUZO_music. And thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys have any suggestions as well for more content, more tutorials, more videos like this, let me know. Let me know in the comments down below. And until next time, thank you guys so much for watching. Peace. How do I turn this off?